How terrifying can the actions of capitalists be? To keep playing golf during the cold winter months, they hired a group of workers in hazmat suits to secretly spray green fertilizer on the lawn under the cover of night. But little did they know, this fertilizer was laced with a deadly virus. By morning, the fertilizer had seeped into the groundwater, and the virus spread through the island's tap water, making its way into the homes of unsuspecting residents. Unaware of the danger, the residents drank the contaminated water, and the result was horrifying. They turned into green-eyed zombies. Driven by an insatiable thirst for blood, they began attacking others, and not even the pets, like small dogs, were spared from the chaos. Officer Dan responded to a call on the island, thinking it was just a simple neighborhood dispute. But as he rang the doorbell, an elderly woman behind him suddenly transformed into a zombie. Hearing the strange noises, Dan turned around, only to see the zombified lady lunging at him. Panicked, he took off running. The old zombie moved slowly, so Dan managed to dodge her a few times before dashing back to his car. Realizing something was seriously wrong, he quickly radioed headquarters for backup, but got no response. He then called his daughter Patricia, who works at the golf course, unaware that she was currently under attack by zombies. Meanwhile, the only person on the island who hadn't turned into a zombie was Andre, thanks to his unhealthy habit of drinking nothing but soda. That night, as usual, he grabbed a bottle of cola from the fridge, but just as he was about to enjoy it, he noticed something strange about his mother's behavior. She was snarling and baring her teeth as she lunged at him, terrifying Andre and forcing him to run outside with his mother in hot pursuit. In his panic, Andre tripped on the steps, and just as his mother was about to reach him, a car came speeding by and struck her, sending her flying. It was Officer Dan, who warned Andre not to go near his mother and told him to get back inside his house immediately and stay put. However, just as Dan finished speaking, more zombies appeared in the distance. Andre hurriedly dragged his injured mother back inside the house, slamming the door shut just as the horde was closing in. But then, his baby sister's cries started agitating the zombies outside, and his mother, now fully transformed, crawled towards the sound. Desperate, Andre locked his mother in the bathroom and quickly placed a stuffed toy in the crib, which thankfully calmed his sister down. The zombies outside also quieted down. To make matters worse, in an effort to prevent the virus outbreak from spreading, the capitalists destroyed the only bridge connecting the island to the mainland, severing all communication lines in the process. The next morning, Andre went to the bathroom to feed his now mutated mother some vegetables, not noticing that his baby sister had followed him. As he hesitated at the door, his sister walked right up to their mother. Panicking, Andre grabbed the vegetables and loudly called out, trying to lure his mother away from the bathroom. But as she moved through the living room, she accidentally knocked over the TV stand, and the falling TV landed squarely on her, finishing her off for good. Andre froze in shock, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. After a few moments, he realized they couldn't stay there any longer. Their food supplies were completely depleted. Glancing at the zombies outside, Andre had a sudden idea. The family cat, which they'd had for 2 years, was about to serve a new purpose. Without hesitation, Andre opened the door and used the cat as bait, leading the zombies away while he grabbed his sister and dashed out into the streets. The zombies quickly followed, forcing Andre to sprint as fast as he could toward the nearby supermarket. When they arrived at the supermarket entrance, Andre found the doors blocked, with no other way in. Just as despair began to set in, a pair of strong hands suddenly grabbed him and pulled him inside. It was Dan. He had already found his daughter, but tragically, Patricia had turned into a zombie. Distraught, Dan had tried to call for help, only to be hung up on by the authorities. With no other options, he reached out to a radio station host, hoping for assistance. However, the host was powerless to help. Without knowing the full extent of the virus outbreak on the island, no one was willing to risk coming to their aid. They were on their own. Dan speculated that the source of the virus might be related to the island's water supply, as the only way an infection could spread so quickly overnight was through the tap water. Andre mentioned that he never drank tap water, which explained why he hadn't been infected. With this in mind, they decided to head to the water treatment plant to investigate further. Meanwhile, a pair of twin sisters, sent by a mysterious organization, arrived on the island via a covert underwater approach. Their mission was to eliminate all evidence of the outbreak. It turned out that the zombie virus was a joint creation of this shadowy organization and the owner of the golf course. At the same time, the owner was busy destroying any evidence of his collaboration with the organization, completely unaware that danger was closing in. The twin assassins tracked him down, armed not only with an antidote to the virus, but also with orders to eliminate him to ensure there were no loose ends. On the other side, Dan and his group finally reached the water treatment plant. Just as they entered, Patricia suddenly went berserk and charged into a sewage pool. Without hesitation, Dan threw off his jacket and jumped in after her. As he managed to pull Patricia out of the water, a zombie appeared ahead of them, snarling as it approached. In a panic, Dan used Patricia as a shield. The zombie, upon catching the scent of its own kind, abruptly halted its attack. However, Andre accidentally made a noise, attracting the zombie's attention. The creature immediately turned and began chasing him. Desperate, Andre ran for his life, narrowly escaping by diving into a car just in time. While pulling Patricia out of the pool, Dan yanked too hard and ended up tearing off her arm. Despite this, he managed to get her out of the pool. The zombies quickly surrounded them, but with Patricia's body shielding him, Dan was able to return safely to the car, still clutching Patricia's severed arm. As Andre stared at the greenish arm, he was shocked to see it covered in grass. It was then that Dan had a sudden realization. The virus didn't originate from the water treatment plant, but from the golf course. The assassins had already released the antidote on the golf course's grass, aiming to neutralize the zombie virus at its source. Meanwhile, Dan, Andre, and the others arrived at the golf course. They entered the main hall, determined to uncover the cause of the virus outbreak. Dan quickly locked the mutated Patricia away, while Andre used chairs to create a makeshift barrier around his sister to keep her from wandering off. With that done, the two of them began searching the hall for clues. However, it wasn't long before Andre's sister began to cry uncontrollably, her loud sobs potentially attracting nearby zombies. Desperate, Andre went back to tend to her while Dan continued his search deeper into the building. Inside, Dan discovered numerous bombs, clearly the work of the two assassins. As he prepared to disarm them, he suddenly felt a strange sensation in his body. It turned out that he had inadvertently consumed contaminated water from the plant earlier and was now beginning to mutate into a zombie. With the bomb countdown rapidly approaching, Dan, in his final moments of consciousness, managed to disarm the bombs using Patricia's arm. Unaware that the bombs had been successfully defused, the assassins returned to the golf course. Meanwhile, Andre noticed that his sister was missing and frantically searched for her, unaware that she had already been found by the assassins. The assassins had lured her with virus particles, causing her to consume the virus. The two assassins, hearing someone approaching, quickly left the scene. When Andre arrived, he noticed nothing unusual, so he picked up his sister and began to leave the hall. Meanwhile, Dan had fully mutated into a zombie. As Andre entered the hall, he was suddenly surrounded by the two assassins with no way to escape. One assassin grabbed Andre by the neck from behind, while the other covered his sister's mouth, preparing to force-feed Andre the virus. In a critical moment, his sister mutated and bit off the assassin's finger. Simultaneously, the zombie version of Dan arrived. The second assassin was about to shoot, but was shoved by Andre straight into Dan, who immediately bit into the assassin. As Andre backed away, he stepped on a vial of the antidote that had fallen to the ground. His sister inhaled a large amount, causing the virus in her body to start dissipating. However, Dan had his sights set on them, forcing Andre to try and flee with his sister. Just as Dan was about to bite them, he suddenly stopped. It turned out that the residual virus in Andre's sister had a reverse effect on Dan, saving them both. The two assassins, realizing their grim fate after being bitten, decided to end each other's lives with gunfire. In the aftermath, Andre locked Dan and Patricia together in a room and recorded the entire incident on his phone. He quickly uploaded the video online. As the video spread across various media platforms, the incident quickly gained widespread attention, leading to immense public pressure. The military was eventually forced to dispatch troops to the island to eradicate the zombie outbreak. Andre, holding his sister, emerged from hiding just as the virus in her body fully dissipated. However, the military's mission was to eliminate all potential threats, including any survivors. Realizing this, Andre quickly sought cover. Unfortunately, Dan, who had returned to normal, wasn't spared either, and he was ultimately cleared, along with Patricia. With nowhere left to turn, Andre and his sister made their way to the shore, where they spotted a small boat approaching. It was their nanny, coming to rescue them. The siblings, now the only survivors on the island, were finally safe. However, as a final, ominous gesture, Andre took the severed arm, which still harbored the virus, and tossed it into the sea. A fish began to nibble on the infected limb, subtly hinting that the danger was far from over.